from Western North Dakota. The men and women in blue are coming back at you. We're straight off the cuff here, episode 24. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning, DC. How you doing, man?
Doing really good. Doing good. Just coming out of a very eventful 4th of July weekend. Eventful and safe, but yeah, let's jump into that, I guess. We had Roughrider days just finalized and finished right behind us. Thought it was good. I thought overall, a couple of minor hiccups. We had Sawyer Brown, poor timing with a couple of thunderstorms.
Always the rain. That's
always
the last
the rain.
couple. Yep.
Saw it coming. We saw it coming. We even talked about it in-house here. Like, it looks like it might miss us, might not miss us, but seems like we're getting more unlucky shakes than we're getting lucky shakes with the weather. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the bigger storms have been kind of scooting around the city, but nonetheless, it just takes a little bit of lightning to, just out of safety, have to kind of scrub those performances and whatnot. So we at the police department, we have a presence down there. Some bands require on their riders a certain amount of security officers, so we had quite a few extra officers putting in some overtime hours to making sure to meet the requirements of the contracts. Got the bigger one coming up here. End of the month here, right? Yep, we got Scotty McCreary towards the end of the month. That'll be another big one. That'll be hopefully really well attended. That'll be a good event.
That should be a good time.
Yeah, so you bring up the extra officers doing some extra things. This tends to be, these couple of weeks stretch tends to be the police department's heaviest, busiest time.
Most definitely. Yep. Anybody
who's been in Dickinson, we know typically you hear a lot of fireworks, the parade detail, things like that. It's a busy time for us. We know it as well as anybody living and working here for however many years we have. It is a near impossibility for the officers that we have to really control and contain it, but we just kind of wanted to have a chat with our audience and just kind of let them know of what it looks like behind the scenes for officers. So, like, give it for example, Mike. What did 4th of July night look like for a dispatcher, for an officer? Yeah,
so we always go into Roughrider days knowing that we're going to be tapped with staff. So months and months in advance, we put basically a schedule lock. We really try to limit our officers and even dispatchers from taking extended vacations over that amount of time, just so that if something does pop off. Last year, we ended up having a murder over the 4th, unfortunately. But making sure that we're preparing to meet the needs of the city and knowing that we're going to have that influx of fireworks calls, barking dogs, all the stuff that comes with that. In addition to all the other calls that would come on any other type of the week. So this year, I believe, I don't know the exact numbers, I think it was every sworn officer except for 2 or 3 that one was out of medical. And so just about, it was all hands on deck, extra dispatchers staffed in the dispatch center just to make sure we had as much coverage as possible. And I think it turned out pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, in all reality, it's times like this where we really have a community that understands where we're at. We have a service that we give where you don't have to wait for a police officer. Anytime you basically call, even though we only have, granted right now, I think we have 5 patrol officers handling and working the street outside of our investigators. But if somebody were to call right now, you're going to get an officer real time, fairly quickly.
Fairly quickly.
This is the one unique time of the year where we do stack calls. Calls do come in and they get held. But you brought up all the officers we had working. I think when we counted it, I think out of our current bullpen, I think we used basically everybody that could. We have a couple of guys on light duty assignments. But I think it was everybody but 2 had to work either the night of the 3rd or the 4th.
Yep.
Those were our 2 heavy days. We got something thrown at us, somewhat last minute, but enough time for us to at least prepare and to put on more resources to. And you got to be one of the guys in a very cool role, and I'm going to let you kind of bounce off and kind of fill our viewers in on what that VP visit looked like.
Exactly, yeah. So it was the Friday before, a week before the 4th of July. We get a call from Secret Service out in D.C. Wanting to speak to the shift commander, of all people, just to give him a heads up that there was a potential that Vice President Vance was intending to make a trip out to Western North Dakota. And that started the process of starting to get our chess pieces in place, starting to gather resources. And by that following Monday, we had our first initial kickoff meeting with they call it an advance team. So Secret Service sends out an advance team to potential sites to gauge the local law enforcement, fire, EMS, all of our resources, capabilities, and to start filling in any of the voids that there might be. So that was a Monday. We started planning, and so we directed, and it was all hands on deck for that as well. Everybody really picked up, pulled their piece really well. So we had Lieutenant Stocky. He really spearheaded a lot of the integration with Secret Service, higher echelon, as part of the command post. Corporal Andy Stidham, our assistant team lead for Southwest Tactical, he was tasked with integrating with the U.S. Secret Service counter assault team, the CAT team. These guys are the guys, the Black Ninjas, so to speak. They were front and center. They were in Butler here last year. Those guys are tasked with basically subduing any potential attack on.
And these guys, just so the viewers, these guys are not the vice president's personal protection. No. Personal protection. This is an addition on top of all of that stuff that's going on.
Exactly. Right. Yep. So we integrated with that because they do require local tactical resources. So the Southwest Tactical Team was an element of that. Yes, I was able to pull a short straw with that one and get my feet in there, and that was quite the experience, to say the least. And just see the sheer mechanics involved with transporting a head of state from one location to the other. Everything has to be. And obviously they do this day in and day out, so they're really good at it, and they're really good people too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're down to earth. They look as sharp in person as they do in the movies, for sure. They're really good to work with. That was very enjoyable. The vice president, we got to meet him at the very end before he boarded the plane. Got to be able to shake his hand, and he's totally just a normal dude.
Yeah.
The intent of this trip was that Friday before was just simply a private family vacation, just a little bit of peace and quiet. They were down in Rapid City on the 3rd, seeing Mount Rushmore, and they figured, well, they're up here, and he's kind of a small town guy himself, and so he wanted to see our small town type of stuff in western North Dakota. So North Dakota was next on his roadmap, and so him and his family came up, brought the 3 kids with them, their dog. And they went on a hike in the park, and a little bit of lunch at the Teddy Roosevelt Library. Saw that under construction. And then the last site, that was probably the best. That kind of put the cherry on the top for me personally, just to all the stress and stuff involved with getting this planned, and the sheer lift of this. Was this dino dig site that they took the kids out to? It's an active dinosaur bone dig, just a little bit east of town. And you could hear the kids hooting and laughing and finding bones and stuff like that. So that right there is like, because it really puts the humanity in perspective. That this is the second most powerful guy in the United States, in the world.
Yeah.
And he's just trying to show his family, a good time, and that's it. Seeing the kids being able to kind of have a little bit of normalcy in what must be a pretty chaotic type of lifestyle. That
was precisely, I got to be a part of this, and I got to see as the motorcades were moving. I was a part of that detail as it went through. And when you shared with me the picture of the fossil dig, and you see the kids and they're doing their thing, and he's just back there looking like any regular dad.
Right. That
was what I thought is, if we could even just allow him to act a little bit normal and pretend like it was normal, because it just, that version of normalcy that's going on, where you have all those staffers and 80 law enforcement attached to you. You have a plane ahead of you. You can't get many moments, I wouldn't imagine, where it just feels like time is slowing down and you're just back to just being a dad.
Exactly. So. Yeah, just give them piggyback rides when they're out hiking. It was just a very, very a sense of normalcy, I hope, that they were able to take from this and to their visit out, and hopefully open-ended invitation for another visit sometime soon. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was big. We really had a lot of help in doing this. It wasn't just on us. This reach went out really big. I mean, we had a lot of help from the Highway Patrol. We had a lot of help from the Sheriff's Office here, the Sheriff's Office in Billings County, Medora, BCI. It was a real well orchestrated event, and I thought that timing frame for us, we would have never wanted it to attach it to all of our stuff that we're putting on, and we're kind of all of our staff, but. At the end of the day, it was a really good accomplishment that everything happened well orchestrated, safe, and kind of shows what we're capable of doing here, even at this moderately sized agency, when we really everybody kind of puts their hands in the pot.
Right, and it took a team effort for it. I mean, there's our detectives. We tasked them out to help with the motorcade through town. There was extra public works or fire department and public works to help intersections at the parade because, of course, as Murphy's Law would have it, that's the time the motorcade was rolling through, right as the same time as our staff was dedicated to shoring up the parade. So it took a lot of team effort and a lot of moving pieces and stuff. And Sergeant Frederick, props off to him to really choreograph that part while we were kind of dealing with the VP visit side. So. Yeah,
because the city kind of took a bit more of a role in Roughrider days. I mean, that parade was kind of held by city staff this year, which was kind of a new version of that. So we hope it looked the same. That was our goal. We weren't trying to change the wheel. We weren't trying to do anything crazy. Exactly. So we're hoping that everything looked the same. A lot of us were busy playing elsewhere, but
exactly.
You've done a good job on Facebook, letting people know. I don't know that I've met any more of a history buff.
I'm a nerd.
In here when it comes to that. But we've got something big that we're just we're kind of spoiling it and sharing it on Facebook already. But we've got a big anniversary coming up here at the DPD.
Right. Yep. So July 31st, 1900 was officially the first day of the Dickinson Police Department away 125 years ago. So yeah, this entire month we kind of did a social media package here to put together for just showing some of the old portraits, some of the old backstory of exactly what where the DPD has been and where we're going. So yeah, all the way up through this whole month up until the 31st will culminate to the DPD 125th birthday party. The Dickinson Police Association and the CDPA has graciously donated a luncheon here for us, so the staff luncheon. So do a little bit of that on that Thursday. And
one cool thing about that luncheon too is not an open to the public thing, but we decided the whole theme of our building, really, when you come in, if you've never been in the Public Safety Center, when you come into our side of it, we really do pay homage to the people that wore the badge before us. Right. Between all of the canvases that are up, between some of the different showpieces that we have here. Anybody that has put in a career here, we're bringing them back in, and we're going to kind of celebrate that day with our retirees also. So current and retirees.
Be good to see some faces we haven't seen for a while.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Well, we've got a guest on today, and we're talking about old timers, and I think he probably qualifies for one now. We've got somebody on the show today that we've chatted about bringing him on before, and I think he's going to be a great storyteller. I think he's going to be able to give us a lot of stuff. I'm putting the bar up high for this guy, but we've got Sergeant Todd Weiler with us today here, and we're going to hand him something easy right out of the gates, and we're just going to have him kind of introduce himself to the audience and kind of who he is, where he's from, and when you started.
Well, that's easy but not exciting story. I'm born in Dickinson, raised here, went to school here, high school here, college, and then midway through college, got started with Stark County as a reserve deputy. I knew a few guys that were over there, and so I started doing that early 2000s, 01, 02, somewhere in there. And then when I was wrapping up college, my final year in 2005, there was a couple spots open. I applied and got on here and started in 06.
Yeah. What was it? You're born and raised here. Did you always have a sense of, I'm going to be a 20-plus year law enforcement officer in this community? Did you have that itch, or was it something that pushed you into law enforcement in those early 2000s?
Not even a little itch.
Okay.
I never gave it a thought. Growing up, nothing. And when I was in college, like I said, I knew a couple guys that were doing some of the I started as a reserve part-time dive team member with the rural fire department. So I kind of knew a couple guys, and then they were rural fire guys and Stark County deputies. And then through that, got into that reserve program probably halfway through my college career. And then I knew Chief Rummel at the time. And towards the end of my college, he's like, you should try the PD. And I'm like, I was like, I don't know. And which is weird. I mean, through college, I changed my major a couple times. Didn't know what I wanted to be. I mean, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
You're a general studies kind of guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I started undecided. I did pre-med for a year or two. Then I got into some science, doing the physics thing. And then I was a math major. And I think I got like 170 college credits and a university studies degree.
There you go. Yeah. You had to play the whole course. You had to play the whole course to find it. But so 20 years. We're coming up to about 20 years that you've been in and around, more than that even with your reserve time that you've been in and around. You've been able to accomplish and do a lot of different things. When you were with Stark County Sheriff's Office for a few years, in between the PD time, you got to run a K-9.
Yep.
You were a SWAT officer. You've been a field trainer. You currently have been assigned. I mean, you run all of our firearms stuff. But what have been some of the highlights as far as the duties and tasks that you've been able to do here?
The highlight for me has been the probably the instructor side of things. I've up until I got into law enforcement, I mean, you could basically call me a career student, and then I've always been a learner. Never wanted to quit learning, and then the best thing for me was the culmination of learning is being able to teach it to someone else. So, throughout my career, the instructor certifications, I mean, I don't even know if I could even list them off the top of my head. I mean, like you mentioned, I was like firearm instructor, less lethal instructor, simunitions, simulators, just FTO, and I just basically, if it could be taught, I went out and sought instructor certification in it, and the PD has been gracious enough to send me to all these things. Yeah.
I remember going back a few years, and I remember when you really sunk your teeth into the firearms one specifically, and we kind of remodeled what we were doing at the time, moved ourselves kind of away from this idea and this concept that all law enforcement officers had to be, bullseye shooters, move us into something more science-based. What is the real way to train to make sure that we're keeping citizens safe and to making sure that we're giving the officer the best chance when you're handling something like that. And I think, because you created a multi-day program. So like we've talked about on the podcast before, we do get a lot of applicants where somebody like Todd, getting a university studies, doesn't really know what they want to do. They want to come in. Well, it's really up to the Dickinson Police Department, because the way that North Dakota's post rules are, they'll come and they'll see you. They'll see somebody like Todd in their first week of work. Maybe they've never touched a gun, but how long does it take you with somebody to get them to the point where we're already meeting the state standards and we're starting to feel confident with this person?
Days. I mean, I can, as little as 2 days, I've been able to do it. And that was, basically that's taking someone with, the bullets go into the gun here and out of the gun here. They've never, never held one. They don't even know which end of the gun is dangerous. That kind of thing. But, that goes, I don't even remember when, but I mean, it had to be about around 2012.
I was going to say,
when we started that.
Probably somewhere between 12 and 14.
It was shortly after my return. Like you mentioned, I went to the county for 4 years to do K-9, and then came back in 12. Had to be around then when I noticed I didn't grow up with firearms. I was never a gun guy. My dad was never a gun guy. We did some hunting as a kid, but that was really about it. And then, sort of in my reserve time, I started taking on more interest in firearms and that kind of thing. Well, when it would have been, I think it was 12 or 13. Don't quote me, but that was when our current firearms guy for the department was retiring.
Yep.
And I knew I had an interest, so I spent probably a year shadowing him and learning as much as I could from him, just on my own.
Yep.
And just trying to position myself, because I saw that this was going to be a need for the department as soon as he retired, because there really was, like he didn't have a protege that he was teaching. So I just took it. I was like, well, I might as well be the guy, you know. So I just
see the problem, own the problem type stuff. Yeah.
So what Matt was kind of mentioning before, kind of like the evolution of maybe not so much industry-wide with law enforcement, although I think it is getting that way, but even just within the department from, Dan Brown, the former firearms instructor, his methodology of firearm shooting, which it was probably the best for the time, right? But then you introduced a little bit more purpose structured type of stuff, law enforcement specific, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Can you kind of highlight some of the big differences between kind of old school, kind of how we used to be doing it versus what the stuff that you're teaching nowadays?
So it's not that it was old school. It was just taught. It was just taught in the past.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. What was taught then is still taught today. We just take it further. We just push people harder and take them further than we did. Back when we started, it was accuracy was absolutely everything, and you sacrificed nothing for accuracy. There really wasn't a program in place. There was training, but only one person did it. Sergeant Brown at the time was the only guy who did it. So you didn't really need a program. Well, what I saw as the future was creating a program that any instructor could follow, and any instructor could bring on a new guy, and every new person could be trained up the same way and hit the street with the same knowledge. So while accuracy is fundamental, what we did is me and, there was numerous other instructors at the time that I, have credit for this. We put together a program that basically, I'm trying to think of the simplest way to put it, is that accuracy is important but not king. If you can do this tight of a group in 10 seconds, but you could do this tight of a group in 4 seconds, this is acceptable. It's being faster but accurate enough.
A lot of this stuff started to happen at the same time that force science and actually like looking at law enforcement incidences. Because when we started, all three of us, we would have to go do a certification. We were doing a lot of shooting from 25 yards with our handguns. Well, when you look at police incidences that are taking place, like that's a rarity. Now, we still need to be competent there, and we're not saying you don't need to be competent there, but really what your program is, the actual hands-on aspect of it, was taking what is the real-life data. Where are law enforcement officers being harmed at? Where are they being met with resistance when it comes to lethal force? And then you built not only the program, but we remodeled our course of fire, because the Dickinson PD course of fire is, I'm biased, considerably more difficult than what the state's minimum standard is. That's what we force all of our officers to do, and we do it. You have to do it yearly, but we even go beyond that even, so like a lot of what you're talking about in this program, it's the way that you highlighted it. It's not different, but it's harder, more challenging. Like we were just demanding more than just the minimum standards. I think that's the perfect way to put it.
If I wanted to put numbers to it, and this isn't scientific, but I would say that we are almost twice as difficult as state standard.
Yeah. Because and it's funny when you bring that up, because you and I have had this conversation several times, and it's a standard is difficult to accept if you're changing something, but everybody will eventually rise to whatever standard that is. So like once that got put in place, I know that there was some resistance, and it was like, well, this is too fast. You're asking me to do too much. And now I look at it and it's like, it's almost strange to try to go back to another shooting course. It doesn't feel right. Like the standard has just been changed.
Yeah, I remember that whole process. Obviously intimately, because it was a remarkable fight to get people on board. we're from a time, all three of us, where it wasn't uncommon where you would be like, all right, let's go do some firearms training. And everybody would go down to the range, and what did you shoot? You either shot a Governor's 20 course or a department qualification. And that's what was considered your firearms training.
Yeah.
Well, when we did this new model, what I took, or what I used as my basis, was that qualifications and Governor's 20s and these things are not firearms training. Training is developing skill sets. But those courses are, I treated them as, that's the minimum standard that any officer should be able to grab a gun, go to a range, cold, not shooting for weeks, months, it doesn't matter, but that's what you should do. And you should be able to do that at will. That's the level you should train to, and that's just the minimum standard. And I remember probably the biggest fight we had, and I'm sure you guys remember this, was I wanted to implement that you can't miss.
Yeah.
And my logic was simple. Missing's unacceptable on the street in real life. Why should you be allowed to miss in a controlled environment? That was a fight. That was a huge fight. Not from everybody, but it was a fight. We're going to lose people. People are going to quit. People aren't going to qualify. And I was like, if they, this is pretty important. People will have a tendency to rise to whatever level of expectation you hold them to.
Right.
And we ended up compromising in my older years. I got wiser, and I didn't put my feet in the ground as hard as I wanted to, but we compromised on 2 rounds, where prior to this, there was no limitation on missing off of the state standards. Well, as long as you scored 70%, you could miss as many as still scored you 70. Right. Well, we implemented 2 rounds. You could only have 2 misses, and on the thirds, it was a no qualification, and you had to go again. And even that was met with resistance.
Yeah.
For a couple months until everybody did it, and then.
And I think even the public might even gasp, like, well, even having 2 rounds off, like kind of that mentality. But with force science and all these studies that are coming up, they're actually saying like active shooters have better accuracy than officers responding to that. Even the most highly qualified operator has, I don't even know the percentage, 40, 50, 60%, something like that on target hits. Whereas, an active shooter, they know where they're going, they're more methodical, and we're reacting to that. And so there's a whole force science element. Yes, in theory, that's where we'd want to strive to, but in actuality, physiologically, even the best trained operators are going to probably be sailing wide a little bit.
I got to make one more point. So you were 100% right in that you've gotten wiser over your time, but there is 2 different courses of fire. They are the same exact thing, but if you accomplish what Todd ultimately wanted, it's recognized by a different course number than doing the exact same thing.
That's right.
And
there we go.
So don't let the audience believe that he has not maybe equally as stubborn, but maybe even wiser, and he's just found a way to skirt the rule. Because I want to say Todd and I, it was just last month that we both went down and we trained, and then we shot the qualification course, and both of us, after all these years, still perfectly clean, no missed targets that you get to send in. So don't let them fool you too much.
But speaking of the courses, though, just briefly, you mentioned it once, Todd. There's actually 2 courses I kind of want you to tell the audience about. One of those being the Governor's 20, he had made mention about, and then you had actually come up with a kind of like interdepartment competition type course. Can you talk about both of those and why we do those?
So the Governor's 20, that's a historical course for the North Dakota Peace Officers Association. It gets shot every year at the NDPOA conference, which isn't coming up here in 5 weeks.
There you go.
5 weeks here in Dickinson.
Yeah, 5 weeks in Dickinson. So we'll do it again. And that was the course that every agency in the state, almost every agency in the state, tended to mimic their qualification course, because whether budgets were tighter, I don't know why, or if it was just a mentality of the time. It was before me, but their qualifications course would mimic this Governor's 20 course, and I would assume it's out of simplicity because then they could practice for this Governor's 20 thing and, get qualified at the same time. It was just less rounds or for whatever reason. But it's a marksmanship course. It has almost no practicality as far as like speed, precision, real world encounters. It's a bullseye shooting course, but it tends to be, it's more of a bragging rights across the state for law enforcement. Yeah. You get to wear your jackets, or, with your number that you or your.
And that's where the 20 comes in.
The 20, it takes the top 20 shooters throughout the state, and it's a prestige thing. It's just
break it up, Todd. What was your top number that you've got?
I hit single digits one year.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah.
But I'll go out and tell everybody right now that I am not the best shooter in the world. Like, I am not. When it comes to bullseye shooting, like, I'm just not the best shooter in the world. What I do have a tendency that I do really well is to get other people to shoot reasonably well in a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
Like, I know enough and I'm good enough that I won't embarrass myself if I'm shooting around other qualified shooters. But my real talent is just getting other people up to speed, like with training and things.
Yeah. So I know that Mikey wants you to talk about another course, but and this has been I've been trying to fit this in. Your program that you built, and like just with what you were talking about right there, we went way beyond just the physical aspect of going down to a range and shooting a target too. That's only a small part of the battle here. Your program really actually focuses on case law. It focuses on policy. It focuses on procedures. It focuses on the legality of what is taking place. So it's truly is like if you're an accountant and you're like, I just think I want to be a police officer, and you apply, we're going to get you every single thing that you could possibly need to be successful. I mean, that's our job. And like when you talk about being a trainer like that, I think that's ultimately what the training staff, I think everybody has. Like everybody's kind of got their niche that like this is what they're good at. But ultimately what our training staff does really well is they have a way to be able to always make better generations of something. Like I promise you that the people that you've trained are better at things than you are. But that should be the goal. I mean, the whole goal is to continue to pass the torch.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, obviously that was a huge part of, and you said that was kind of the pinnacle, is like the training piece. One thing that when Mike and I were talking about bringing Todd on, we're going to do ourselves an injustice if we don't get this in early. You've been around for a long time, and you've just been able to encounter a lot. Like most of your time, actually probably nearly all of your time, has been working a patrol officer's schedule and working the night shift, day shift, answering calls. I think you held a record probably for being a part of the most chaotic situations. It seemed like every time it was happening, it was like Todd's somewhere, like he's on this scene somewhere. Where exactly is he at? But is there any situations or incidences through your time and tenure that really stand out that you want to talk about, and kind of just do a little bit of like a war story type piece to it?
Well, talking about myself isn't one of my strong suits, but everything that you would consider a critical incident, like you said, I don't know how or why, but it seemed like I was always a part of them, except for the first one where I forget his name, Wetzel back in
2008,
7, 8,
yeah. Actually 7, and then the year from hell was 2008, and then the year from hell was 2009.
Yeah, 2009 was our rough year.
So whether I was at the county or whether I was at the city, I don't know how or why, but we just ended up at every one of them in some way. I'm trying to. So there was. Yeah, Wetzel was 7 or 8. I went to the county from 8 to 12. And then, what was the next one? The Fugitives?
Fugitives have been in 08.
Yep, that would have been June of 2009.
Yeah,
June of 2009. Yeah.
So on that one, I was working that night, and I was the car behind Trooper Christopher, right?
Yep,
yeah. Megan. I was the car behind her when she was took a round in the headrest. Funny story about that one. The sergeant at the time, Cadamus, know him real well. We all know him, Wade. But She was broadcasting on, I think, Stark, and they were on State, and just Mike can tell you more about the radios than I can, but they weren't what they are today, interoperabilities and things like that. So he was only getting half of what she was saying. And after she got done saying she's taking fire through the windshield, he got on as he was the sergeant, and he's like, yeah, if we get this car stopped, we're going to do a felony stop on it. It's like, what? Good idea. Let's do that. But he obviously didn't hear anything about her taking fire. He just heard she was in a chase,
I mean, backstory just a little bit, because I think we had, was it Mosier that kind of went through this a little bit, but that was quite a few episodes ago. What was the lead up to these fugitives here? Do you remember all that?
They were 2 guys in prison in Alabama, somewhere in Alabama, and their girlfriends had, I don't know the plan or what took place to get them out of there, but they got out of it. It was like a private facility or something like that. 2 girlfriends got them out, and then they... I don't even know where they were trying to get to anymore. Maybe Canada or something.
Probably.
I thought the story was Canada originally.
Fries and gravy.
Get some poutine.
Yeah. Whatever they were trying to make. But anyways, they ended up in Dickinson robbing the whatever movie store was on Villard. Movie gallery.
Yep.
And it was... I remember it was around lunchtime because deputies and troopers were at Perkins, 11, 12 o'clock at night or something like that. And it came out, and we were going to help out the PD, and the car was going north. She was in front of me, flipped on it, and then I kept going towards the movie gallery. And then when she radied out that they were running, and I was like, well, that must really be the car. So I flipped and started following her, and then it was just me and her down the interstate towards Gladstone, and they turned off in Gladstone. When we got into Gladstone, she had. Obviously, she was getting shot at, so, she wasn't, like, on their bumper. She backed off a little bit and just kind of kept him in sight. Lost him going over the hill into Gladstone, going down into the hill, and then she lost him. Thought they turned left into that residential area where they ended up they went through. So we actually ended up losing them, and then we were setting up perimeters and stuff on this residential area until I think it was... Wolf, I think was the name of the farm, but they called and said that they saw people in the garage, and they're like, well, they must have slipped us, or we never had them. And then everybody went down there.
Yeah. So we talk about, Mikey mentioned 2009 was kind of our year from hell. 2009, what is Todd, where was Todd? Because I'm assuming you're right in the mix of this thing too. A couple of incidences from 2009 that stick out to me, I guess, probably stick out to you.
You're going to have to remind me of 09.
So
which other ones were in 09?
So 09, we would have had the June situation in Belfield, officer involved shooting.
Was that the Newton?
That was Newton.
Okay.
And you were very intimate into that situation.
I forgot that was 09.
That was 09. Yeah. Yep. June, I want to say it was almost a year to the day. It was very close. It was June of 09. So Todd's right there in the mix of that situation also. Another time where we're exchanging fire. I don't think in that time he never got a round off in that law enforcement situation.
Nope, not at us. That was a day shift deal. We were at the office, got called out as some guy broke into a residence just on the north side of Belfield, shot. There was 2 people in there, shot one in the head or something to that effect. So we all get going over there. We're on the highway just to the west of the residence, trying to formulate a plan on how to storm a farmstead with 4 guys. It was like 3 deputies, and I think it was Trooper Holdnagel at the time.
Yep.
BCI. But I remember him telling us afterwards. We were trying to come up with this plan to storm it, and he's just like, "This is a terrible idea, but I'm with you." It was just a stupid idea, But we were all young. No one had, just everybody's bulletproof back then.
Trying to figure it out.
We were just trying to solve problems that we didn't have any idea how to do it. And then while we were doing this, we were trying to come up with this plan, whether it's lucky or unlucky. We never ended up having to, storm the residence. This suspect left in his vehicle. He was Detective A-Strike at the time, then now sheriff later, but he was the sniper for the county. So he had a long gun on the residence, and he was able to call out that this guy's getting in a car, leaving, and he's full of blood and all this other stuff. And so I ended up following him, and it was maybe a couple mile. I'm not even going to really call it a chase. We were probably doing 50 miles an hour. And while I was rating this stuff out, some guys finally went to the residence to check on victims. And the one thing about that day that stands out to me, and this lesson has served me very well throughout my career, right? Because this was pretty young. Dispatch came on the radio saying that the guy left his gun behind. And in my mind, that meant he was unarmed. So I'm chasing this guy, and we end up at, I think it was a honey place, right?
Yep. It was like it was like a farmstead or like a shop Quonset where we used to do some like business with bee
honeybees or something.
Yep.
But I follow him into there, and I didn't know it was his family or this was their family place at the time. But he pulls in, and there's people, 3 or 4 people, standing outside of this shop-looking thing. And the only thing I think of is I got to stop him from getting to them because there's really nothing else here. It's just a shop, open lot. So I go beside him, in between him and these people who I later found out were his family. And I get out of the car, have my long gun at the time, and he gets out and he's got a wheel gun that looked like Dirty Harry, now looking back at it, and I remember I have never cussed dispatch more in my life because they said he left his gun. And it wasn't until a while into it, I'm just like, oh, maybe he had 2. Maybe this is just the one American who owns 2 guns. So he gets out with this. So we have this standoff, and if I remember right, I think he was high, so you can imagine how this went. It was just a screaming match. But now everybody starts showing up. There was, I think, Holden Eagle was there. It was you. It was Captain Kitzman at the time, and I think Frederick was there. Just everybody started showing up, and my captain Kitzman, he just came walking up from the back. Like nothing was going on, and gets behind me in my car, and I can't remember. He's like, do you think you're close enough to tase him? And I'm like, this is back when tasers were pretty new.
Another thing I vividly remember about this afternoon, the wind is bucking, North Dakota wind, 50, 60 miles an hour, making the taser basically useless, but this is the idea.
And I'm not sure if back then they were 20 or 25s. I don't remember what we carried, or 21s. You know what I mean? Like, whatever he was, he would have been at the absolute maximum range of whatever these tasers we had at the time would have reached. And I'm like, I'm just trying I got no idea. I'm like, but I don't think it's a good idea. And he's like, you should try to tase him. And I'm just, and you're not going to sit there and argue, but I just remember everything going through my mind. I'm like, this guy's got a cannon. Like, what am I going to tase him for? And so finally I'm like, all right, we'll give it a try. I'm like, you just be ready to shoot if he gets mad. And so I kind of crawl up under the front of my car behind the wheel well, and I get the taser out, and he sees the taser. And then and that's when everything ensued.
Now, mind you, at this entire time, he had seen how many guns, probably?
Probably 15. Or 12,
and none
15.
Of that really drew any type of a reaction.
Nothing.
But the one reaction he did have is, like you said, he saw the taser. That was what spurred a reaction. He just didn't like that device.
Yep. Nope, he saw me with a taser, and he leveled off whatever that gun was, just right at me. And, about the time I was looking at the barrel of that gun, you and two or three total, I think, shooters, right?
Yeah, Kitzman,
Holden Eagle, and and one thing that sticks out to me, not that it was, a good thing or bad thing, but they talk about a lot of things that happen, and I just remember, like I could see like the muzzle of that gun was this huge, and just whatever, for me, time slowed down. You know what I mean? Like I could actually. It was like I could actually see you guys impacting him. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful because I'm still here. Because I tried to tase a man with a gun.
I think they teach you over and over and over in that those are bad ideas, but
terrible ideas.
But you already brought it up that bad ideas were being had to try to solve that problem, and sometimes there's just no good solution. Sometimes it's you're trying to handle it. But
no good solutions with inexperience. Terrible.
How about okay? So that was a really clear picture, but that's not the only one. No. Now you find yourself in it really felt like the city of Dickinson was undergoing like our oil boom explosion that started to take place. Populations coming up. We're getting a lot of different people in there. It just felt like calls like that. Mikey started a little bit before I did. You started a little bit before that even, and felt like we were all cutting our teeth on situations like that. And good, bad, or indifferent. I just think that we started to really hone our skills. We started to really learn. And I want you, just because you're a better storyteller than I want you to kind of go the last situation that you and I actually worked partners on a shift. You were my corporal, I was your sergeant back in the day. But we go through another chaotic situation that I have accounted at times to be probably the hardest call that I ever tried to solve, and that was on 4th Avenue East. About 2 o'clock in the morning, we got a really chaotic situation, and you and I got to kind of lead the charge on the leadership side of that. And I feel like when you talked about how your body was reacting and what you're going through, it sucks that you had to get good at this. And it sucks that a lot of us got good at these things, but you really start to learn how to help the younger generation, kind of tying it back to your training piece. I felt like all of those situations that we had been a part of kind of culminated to help other people process, like probably the toughest call. I don't know if it's your toughest call either that you've had to work, but.
Well, before we go into that story, just to qualify it a little bit, is we talked about 2, but I mean, there's still, like what, 5, 6, there's half a dozen more stories like that I've been a part of, or other guys around here have been a part of before this 4th Avenue East. And I couldn't agree with you more that it was the hardest call I've ever been a part of. Not because the situation was different or any more difficult or anything of that sort, but you and I were not there solving the problem. We were there leading the guys, solving the problem, which made it that much more intimate, that much more personal. If I'm there and I make a bad decision as the guy solving the problem, I suffer the consequences. Where we were there kind of, leading this group of guys, and if we screwed up, they suffered the consequences, probably more than we did.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call that, burden, whatever it is. But, so yes, I couldn't agree with you more that was probably one of the toughest calls. And even post that call, I don't know how many conversations you and I have had about it, but it just hit different.
Yeah.
It definitely hit different.
Yeah, there was something different. Everybody in this room has been intimate on a call for service where we are taking rounds, we are being shot at, or our situation has been, lethal force for a police officer like Todd had just articulated. It doesn't necessarily, the gun doesn't have to be pointed at me, but I saw that your life was in danger, vice versa. You can go through other situations where it's, that's what you're taking at. But in this circumstance, I remember for me, one of the ones that's always stuck with me was when I heard the call that we had the wrong guy initially, and then all of a sudden I heard like a frantic yell, and then I start hearing shots being fired and not being able to help. So like when you said you would have rather have been there, you're saying that you'd have felt more comfortable being the guy with the taser on the bad plan, being right there in the fire, than being a guy because of why? As a leader right now in our department, as a sergeant, you're in charge of people. Why did it hit you different?
I think it was the first call as a supervisor that I was part of in that capacity. Between whatever it's been, 6, 7, 8 different times, I've been in the line of fire myself in some way or the other, or directly involved in solving the problem, where I don't remember exactly timelines, but, we were pretty new as a sergeant corporal. As far as the scope of our careers, at that time, I probably spent 15, 16 years solving problems and maybe a year solving or helping people solve problems. So I mean, it was new.
Yeah.
It was a completely different thing. So I mean, it was outside of my comfort zone. You know, I mean, you can read as many books or take as many courses or as many leaderships, this and that, but until you lead people through something like that, like, I mean, there's no classroom that teaches you that.
Yeah.
I mean, they could teach it in theory, but that's...
Yeah, practicality. I mean, having the theory is incredible because you can lean on some of those things for advice, but the practicality portion of law enforcement, military, first responder style leadership, it really is different. It's a different style of. I mean, just talking about, and like I said, we're not even highlighting all of these because otherwise we would be here for a really long time. But you've hit,
if you want to change war stories, I mean,
you've hit many different things, and you're talking about a career filled with this type of stuff. And when we talked about bringing you on the podcast, we asked how open you wanted to be, and you were a good sport about this. And we really did have. There's been a couple of times I feel like in these walls in these past few years, where we kind of take a gut punch, a little bit of a gut punch here in the police department. Some of that has come from some people unexpectedly leaving us. Some of it has been, you know, the tragedy of Sergeant Wallace taking his own life. That one hit us differently. You know, for me, I guess, with my connection that I've always had with Todd went through a major life change, and I wanted to kind of talk about that with you on the podcast. And I thought that, you know, talking about just what is the life, what is the stressors, what is, you know, people a lot of times will hear like, oh, you're a Dickinson police officer, it must be a quiet little town.
Yeah, right.
You know, that's a lot of what we get, and it's like, yeah, it is. I'm not going to take anything away. It's a very quiet, safe place. We've seen that this last weekend. You know, we can do a lot of things, but at the same time, you put a career together. You've been challenged many times in the stresses that your body carries, and yeah, I'm just going to kind of hand it over to you if you want to kind of share some of what Todd has been battling here these past 2.5 months.
Yeah. So in disclosure here, I think the audience needs to know that when it comes to this podcast, you can opt out of talking points, and I left it blank. So when you say I was an open book, I left it completely to you guys.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was no-go zones.
Yep.
But so the past couple months was dealing with heart attack. Yeah.
And so I remember you calling, and I remember you calling me when it had taken place, because we were in my office that day.
I was having it in your office.
Yeah, you were in my office that day, and I think to myself, and I'm like, man, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Everything just seemed like a normal working day. And then as you tell me, you're like, hey, listen, I think it was through text messages like a day or two later, because it was on your off time, typical patrol cop. So your Wednesday, Thursday was your weekend.
Yeah.
And you let me know, hey, I'm not going to be to work on Friday. And in typical Todd fashion, I'm like, oh man, what's going on? And I'm having open heart surgery on Friday morning. I had a heart attack after work on Tuesday, and I'm just like, what in the world is happening here? Come to find out, it only gets worse, because as Todd is at home, he gets this thought in his head that maybe this is something I should go check out. I have this weird feeling. And in typical Todd fashion, he drives himself to the ER, actively having this heart attack. And it's just, I find your story and your recovery and what you've done in this past couple of months. I mean, everybody in the office, like we crack jokes about it, because it's just that it's that obscene to us that like you're here in your, you know what I mean? Like I feel like you've only gotten better.
Don't be so surprised at my survivability that it's obscene I'm still here.
So what was the onset? I mean, what you told me, and it absolutely terrifies me, so I know it'll terrify the audience here, I'm sure.
Well, I know after I told my story, everybody around here, every ache and pain they had, they're like, oh, shit, is this mine? But so it started out on that Tuesday morning. I drove into work feeling fine, hopped in the car, took Sergeant Hansen home. We swapped out, told, whatever the brief was for the day. And it was about 7 a.m. I started getting a pain just in my right shoulder. I mean, more of an ache. I mean, if I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, it was like a 2, just an ache. And then by like 9 o'clock, it grew into a pretty good discomfort. And I was like, and sometimes wearing body armor, you know what I mean? Just like, and all that stuff, like every once in a while. So I just drove back to the office and, unzipped my body armor and just kind of took in it. But it never really went away throughout the day. And so then that same thing, 6 o'clock rolls around. I go pick up Sergeant Hansen and get my truck and drive home. And I remember I got home and it was still there. And so I went and got in the shower and was like spraying hot water on it for 30 minutes. And then went out and, tried to have one of those Theragun things. And I was just trying to work it out, thinking it was a muscle knot. Oh, I'm sorry. I even forgot at like 9, 10 in the morning when the chiropractor opened up, I even went over there and had my neck and shoulder adjusted, thinking I slept wrong. I didn't have any idea. Yeah. It definitely wasn't signs of like what you see for heart attacks. And so then I'm at home, and I even have my daughter who goes through these CTE EMR classes and stuff, and she's got this Theragun working on my shoulder. And I was like, and I'm joking with her, I'm just like, I'm probably having a heart attack. And she's like, no. Men are in their left shoulder. I'm like, oh, well, then I'm good. so taking my advice from a 16-year-old, medic trainee at the high school, And so I go to bed. It's like 8:30. I'm going into days off. I'm just old and go to bed early. So, I mean, it wasn't even out of the normal for me to go to bed at 8:30. And my wife of, 20 years is on vacation in New Mexico visiting family. So it's just me home with the 4 kids. And I wake up at about 11:30 and the pain's still there. And so like a natural, I just started Googling heart attack signs, and everything you read is like, men are left shoulder, and all this other stuff. I'm like, it must not be that. Well, I read enough that I must have worked myself up into chest pains, So now I'm getting chest pains, but I'm assuming they're just because I was Googling, and WebMDing my symptoms. And so it's about 11:30, 12 at night. I'm like, I'm gonna go to the ER, get checked out. I was like, I'll be back. My kids won't even know I'm gone. And before everybody gets freaked out, my kids are old enough.
Yes.
I didn't leave, like toddlers and bassinets. Like all my kids are, pretty much older and
I think once they put eyes on you, they knew that you didn't have any toddlers.
But so I drive myself I get in the car and I just go to the ER. And at this point, I still didn't even call my wife. I have no plans of telling my wife that I was going to the hospital. And I didn't know how I was going to explain the bill, the ER visit. But at this point, I still had no plans of waking her up and spoiling her vacation. So I go to the ER. I sit at the little desk thing. She, ladies, there's, what can we do for you? And I'm like, well, it's like, I don't want to sound paranoid. I'm like, but can you check me out for a heart attack? And she just kind of looks at me funny. She's like, yeah. I was like, all right, cool, let's do that. So like they come back and get me. And lo and behold, you can attest to how busy our ER is. Those people they work, and there's at most one other person in there. Their board is just completely empty. So I go in there and they hook me up all their machines and EKGs, AKCs, I don't remember what it was, the EK, whatever it is. And they're just, oh yeah, you look good. Yeah, really nothing's really going on. I was like, oh, okay, well, it makes me feel better. So like, well, let us take some blood work and we'll see what's going on. And I'm just like, okay. Works for me. So, a couple minutes later, this lady comes in, takes my blood. And I was at the one on the corner right across from the nurse's station. And my times are probably a little messed up, but I'm going to say like maybe 15 minutes after she comes in, I can see the mood starts to change a little bit. And I even hear an ambulance page go out. They're paging for a transfer. And I'm like, oh, that poor old guy next to me. I'm like, I wonder where he's got to go, And pretty soon they come in with IV bags and they just start pumping me full of stuff. And this, the doctor's like, he's like, yeah, you're having a heart attack. We got to get you to Bismarck. And I'm like, I said I was good. And he's like, yeah, you got troponin, whatever the protein from whatever it is, right? You got a lot of that. We talked to Bismarck. They want you. You're going to Bismarck. And at this point, I'm talking to him like I'm talking to you. I still feel fine. I got like a little ache. And they start pumping me full of something out of an IV bag, giving me nitros and all this other stuff. And he's like, we're sending you to Bismarck. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, I'll drive to Bismarck then if you guys can't help me. And he's like, no, we got the ambulance coming. I'm like, I am not going in an ambulance. I was like, I'm perfectly fine. Like, I'm talking to you. Like, we're good. he's like, no, because you don't understand. He's like, we got the ambulance coming. You got to go by ambulance. I'm like, well, I know enough to know that you can't make me. So I'm like, take the stuff off me. And I'm like, I'll go to Bismarck. He's like, I don't think you understand the severity of the situation you're in. So we go back and forth. And finally, I'm just like, the ambulance gets there. And I'm like, whatever, fine. Just take me by ambulance. So now I'm in the ambulance going to Bismarck. And I'm like, now's probably the time. It's like, I probably should tell my wife.
That was the kicker.
I don't know if maybe there's someone watching that knows her, but so I'm on my way to Bismarck and I'm in the ambulance and I'm just like 3 a.m, something like that, 2:30, I don't even remember. Hey, what are you doing? It's like they're transferring me to Bismarck, and she goes, I remember she's like, what do you mean transferring to Bismarck? You're not even working. And I'm like, well, I was like, I didn't feel so good, so I went to the ER. I think I'm having a heart attack, and she's like, all right, well, I'll change my flights. And I'm like, let's pump the brakes. I'm like, let me get to Bismarck. Let me figure out what's going on. Because she was supposed to fly home Thursday night, and this is Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
So the soonest she would get to me is basically 24 hours earlier. So I'm like, let's not go through all the hassle. I'm sure it's going to cost a boatload of money to swap up flights. I'm like, let me get settled in. Let me figure out what's going on. And then if we need to change flights, we can change flights. So I think she agreed with me just to shut me up. But I think when she told me later that her and her mom were already changing their flights. But I get to Bismarck, and I'm sitting in the ER there and waiting for a bed in whatever the heart unit is to open up. So I'm sitting in the ER, and I go through probably a couple different shift changes. But this nurse kept coming in and taking my blood every 20, 30 minutes. And then finally, I'm like, what are you guys looking for? I'm like, God, you keep poking me. I'm like, what's happening? And she's like, well, we got to check your troponin levels to see if they're going up or down. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, what level causes you concern? And she's like, something like 2 or 3, 4,000. She's like, we start to get really, that's a big deal. We start getting worried. And I was like, okay. I was like, am I going to need to find a ride home? Because I didn't know I was waiting for a bed. I just thought they were there to check me out. Maybe they had something Dickinson didn't have. And I was like, do I need to find a ride home? Because I came by ambulance. I'm like, how am I going to get out of here? And she's like, you're not going anywhere. I'm like, am I admitted? She's like, yeah, you're admitted. I mean, I won't say what she said, but yeah, she's like, you're admitted. I'm like, all right, cool. I guess I'm admitted. So then finally, we had this. I was just in this conversation with her. They came in, and I was like, so you said 3,000 or 4,000 causes concern. And I'm like, what am I? Give me a reference, give me a scale. She's like, you're 7,600 something. And I'm just like, oh, that kind of took me off. That took me off my feet. And then, so then just being me, I was like, well, what's high score? I was like, do I at least got that? She's like, you're the second highest person that's ever come through our ER.
Man. That's wild.
That's crazy.
I don't know if that has anything to do with the severity of the heart attack or just I caught it sooner and my levels were higher. I don't have any, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, so I'm like, and I even asked her, I'm admitted. And she's like, yeah, you dumbass. You're admitted. She's like, you're just waiting for a bed. So then after that, I called Rochelle and I'm like, yeah, you might want to bump your flights up. So then, because then intervention cardiologists started coming in and meet with me and, that kind of thing. So,
got to make 2 points before I go to what brings you back here. Remember how at the beginning of this, Todd said that he's become wiser and he argues less, but yet it was only about 8 weeks ago an ER doctor and Todd are having what sounded to me like a typical Todd argument on taking the ambulance. So,
yeah.
But successful open heart surgery.
Yep.
You started your recovery only after a couple of days at Bismarck. You got sent back. You've been back home. You were only even away from work for a short amount of time. I mean, when everybody was hearing oh, hey, Todd's going to come back. He's going to be on light duty capabilities, and he's going to be doing, less hours, but he wants to come back. He wants to be back. And I know in talking to you, it's rare, I think now, more rare at least it feels, that you're getting 20-plus year officers. You know what I mean? We just see less of that. We see this career really does have a way to just kind of, exhaust you, I guess would be a good word. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of get exhausted by dealing with everybody's problems day in and day out. And when we were talking about that, and we were pretty open with each other, like what does this look like for Todd? And in just true Todd and in true public servant way, you said to me, you didn't want somebody else to be able to take away your decision to continue serving Dickinson and to continue to do this job. And that was the biggest reason to bring you on the podcast and to share that story with everybody was just, I think we've done a really good job of the human behind the badge. I think it's pretty real. Like we do a good job about that here, but it's like some of the stuff that we get asked to carry, and we do it willingly. You know, Todd, you knew the job and you knew the risks. You talk about the risks of hearing Captain Kitzman at the time, like, get your taser, get under there. And Todd's like, damn, this is a bad idea, but that's what we do, you know, or like formulating a bad plan. And I just couldn't be happier to wear the same uniform as you, to call you my friend, and to continue to have you and have the ability to continue to work here for you. I just think it's been a real pleasure. Like I appreciate everything that you do and you continue to do. Your recovery efforts have been really good. You're looking that possibly it's even going to be this calendar month, that you could be cleared to go back, continue to start doing police work again, like in more of a real capacity than kind of what you've been bouncing around today. So typically Mikey and I like to give you an opportunity to just say, if Todd Weiler could see a brand new officer, somebody walks in here today with what you've gone through in your career and everything that you've accomplished, and carrying a family and having 4 kids and being a patrol officer, juggling, you know, a chaotic schedule and everything that you've done, what would be the piece of advice to give to somebody to put a 20-year career in, and not to just say, hey, listen, this is a fun job. You're going to have some ups and downs, but how do you get through it? How do you endure? How does somebody make that happen?
Well, the advice I would give is not really, I mean, it's advice, I guess, but it would be more of a philosophy or a mentality. Because, I mean, I could give, like you mentioned, like I've been in the training realm now for almost longer than I've been a cop. So I've seen new people to become successful, and I've seen new people that haven't made it, just weren't made for it. And I could tell people how to get through the interview, but between YouTube, I mean, like, if you can't figure that out, I mean, you're not going to make it anyways. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things out there. I can tell you how to get through a police interview, but every time I get someone new, and especially as a sergeant, as you know, because you're responsible for the people now, the people training them and their training. So I mean, like, you're responsible for multiple different aspects of this. And at some point in everybody's field training, everybody's a little bit different, and everybody gets a little bit different speech from me. But they all get pulled aside, and I give them the recipe for 20 years. And that's the first thing you want to do. And every problem that I've seen in law enforcement, at least in my supervisory career, comes from mismanaging the expectations of new people. You know, for whatever reason, either I or somebody in the department, whoever it is, we don't manage their expectations well enough, and then they get disappointed. I look at the pitfalls in my career. You know what I mean? Just to divert a little bit, mentorship was not a thing for us when we started. You know what I mean? Everybody was always scared. At least this is my humble opinion. I feel everybody was scared of somebody taking their spot at the table or the seat at the table that they wanted. So they never mentored. They always wanted you to be a little bit behind them. So that way it was just natural progression that would take them, you know, through the ranks. Well, I mean, I'm a testament to that. I mean, there's, you know, outside of the chief and Alliance, I don't know if anybody's worked at this place longer than I have. You know, I'm a sergeant. There's sergeants that have passed me that have come and gone. There's, you know what I mean? Multiple people, you know what I mean, that have surpassed me. So the thing I tell them is not only find somebody that will help you manage your expectations and be truthful with you, but be the kind of person that somebody wants to invest in. You know what I mean? You just be the person, just be somebody that somebody sees you as worth investing in. And so that's the first step, as I think you have to, because there's tons of mentors, good and bad, that will mentor you in a way. So I mean, find somebody that has taken the path that you think you want to take, because you don't know what you don't know when you're new. Find somebody that is on the path that you want, or at least you think you want, and then don't be scared to pivot from that. You know what I mean? Like, you can find another one or a different one or have more than one. The other conversation I have with people, and this just has to do with managing expectations, and this is a conversation I don't know if it's had with every new person, but I think it needs to be, is I break out their daily activity. I'm a numbers guy, like in my university studies, but I mean, how many years? I think I got like one class away from a math major if I'd go back to school. But like, I like numbers. I'm a numbers guy. So I break their day out into something that they can understand and apply. So take a typical patrol officer, and I'm going to use patrol because that's all I know. 25% of your day is taking calls for service. It's the general public calling us to solve some problem that we are just going to respond to and figure out. Those is the 25% of your day. The other 25% is going to be the paperwork side of that. So basically 50% of your job, if you look at it this way, 50% of your job is to go solve the public's problems, keep the public safe, whatever it is, you know, and then cover the paperwork, arrest reports, narratives, case reports, all that stuff. That's going to be, if you think of it this way, that's 50% of your day. Then take 25%. Find something that you enjoy, something that truly brings you happiness. Whether you're a traffic enforcement guy, whether you're a warrants guy, whether you want to do PR stops and hang out in the schools and daycares and go to businesses and meet people and talk to people. Spend 25% of your time doing that. And in true cop fashion, those are usually low paperwork producing things. And that's why we like them, because no one likes paperwork. So now you're at like maybe 10% of your day is the paperwork side of doing the things you like to do. And that leaves about 15% of just the things about this job that are almost a nuisance to a patrol officer, right? We got to do courtroom security. We got to do transports. You know, your deputy chief wants you to go do something stupid because he doesn't want to do it. You know, paper, rock, rank, and the new guy gets to go do it. You know what I mean? There's just some almost bothersome things that you do just because you're paid to do. You know, but if you go into it with a mindset like that, you know what I mean? Like, because what I find is the biggest pitfall in new guys is they find the thing that brings them true joy in the job, and they try to spend all their time doing it, and then they almost resent the other things. You know, the dog call, the 15th domestic for the week. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it almost it bothers. You know, I'm not gonna say it bothers them to take it.
It takes some of the love away from the job of what they originally had expected, I think, is kind of what you're driving at. It's just, but giving them an expectation that it's not all glamorous. Like, there's going to be some stuff here that you're going to have to do, because that's the oath we take. You know, we've willingly agreed to do the fun stuff and the not fun stuff. Like, that's what the bargain is.
Yeah. You know, but when you help them and lead them in that way, you know what I mean? Like, it gives them something to at least weigh their day against, you know. And not every day is going to work out like that, I mean, by the numbers. But it just, you know, what other job? Tell me what other job in the world that you get to tell your boss 25% of the time, hey, I like doing this, I just want to go do that. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But if you get into a place where what I want to do becomes 75% of your day, you're not going to make it just because your expectations aren't managed.
Yeah.
So that's a long piece of advice, but find somebody that will be honest with you and manage your expectations of what this career will hold. You know, when I left here in 2008 for the county, it wasn't for more pay and it wasn't for, you know what I mean? It was because there was no one to manage my expectations. I put in for a K-9. I didn't get the K-9. They had one open. So I left this career at the police department to go take a K-9 there. You know, if there would have been someone to manage my expectations, if I would have had a me back then, someone would have just been like, well, why don't you just apply for the next one?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we had a dog before they were getting this dog. Like, why don't you just apply for the next one?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't have a me back then. And I look at all the pitfalls in my career that I've made, that I've had to learn the hard way. And, you know what I mean? Like, why? Yeah, I've never understood it. You know what I mean? Like, why would we want to make someone suffer through the mistakes we made?
Yeah.
You know, whether they listen to us or not. And you guys are the same way. I mean, all you can do is give them the information. They still might trip and fall and do the things you tell them not to do. But at least, you know, I mean, if you can save a few of them from stumbling down a bad road.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
That's well put.
That is well put.
Yeah.
I think that, and I know that it comes from a real place because, like I said, you and I talk about that, and I know that conversation that's come up. And, you know, the other one, I thought maybe you're going to go into this route, and this is going to be much more brief.
Well, I probably left it because it would be
much more brief than Todd's, but we've had conversations before, and you know, like any organization our size, we'll have conversations freely about, you know, what is something that we could be doing that we're not, or, you know, what should we focus more attention on, and we really try to get the buy-in of, like, how do we get to the next level? What is the next piece of it? And I remember it was just as easy as Todd's. It's just like, well, I need to be better. Speaking about yourself, I need to be better because that's the one thing that I have ultimate control of. And I just think that just that simple piece of advice mixed with your expectation piece, there's certain things that are out of our control. Allowing them to happen. Don't let that piece eat you up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that you're a walking example of that, and you're doing it. You've faced a lot of tests, and you're still here. You still got your badge. You still got your gun. And I know you say it's not simple.
I lost it for a minute.
It's not a simple feat, but no, it's been a joy to have you on, Todd, and to kind of show our viewers who you are. And
yeah, and if they can't get after hour 17 here, a good beat of what Todd is. Yeah, he's just a solid dude, and one of the few people probably the only person I've known this long that I've never seen like lose his stuff, like pop his lid or lose his temper or something like that. He's always been like honey barbecue. I've never seen Mako habanero ever out of this guy. It's absolutely amazing.
Never number 7, whatever it was.
Number 8.
Was, just on that point, I don't remember who it was, but there was when we were training. This was within the last maybe couple of 2 years. We were training somebody, and it was just one of them 3 a.m. conversations in roll call, or not roll call, but squad room, you know, and just like, God, you never get worked up at calls. Like you're never excited. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of paid not to be, but I was like, here's the deal. I was like, if I ever get excited and like I'm worked up, like that's when you start worrying. That's when it's time to worry.
Yeah.
Like then things have gone really wrong, and we're doing bad plans with not enough
there you
people.
go. We're
tasing people.
We're doing tasers.
Yeah, now we're tasing people with guns.
No, that's been excellent. So, I know that you said that you were worried about coming on, so you have done some research on it, so you kind of have an idea, but we're going to jump into some speed cuffing here. How this works. I'm going to read them off. You just give me, boom, hit me with the first answer that's coming to mind on this thing, all right?
All right.
Here we go.
Favorite gun of all time?
Favorite gun of all time? I'd have to go with the one I just got, and that would be the 1886 Winchester.
True or false, Die Hard is a Christmas movie?
Absolutely not.
What is the last book you read?
The last book I read was the Jocko kid book, Mikey and the Dragons, to my kids.
What AR-15 component allows the trigger and the hammer to rotate during the firing cycle?
Okay, say that one more time.
What AR-15 component allows the trigger and the hammer to rotate during the firing cycle?
Trigger pin.
Jocko podcast or Sean Ryan show?
I want to go Jocko.
Last one. If you're not a cop, you never became a cop, what would you have been?
Probably an inmate.
An inmate. Well said.
I don't have any idea. Like I said earlier, I still don't even know what I want to be when I grow up. So,
University studies, everybody.
There you go.
Studies.
And I got 170 credits. So if anybody needs some, I can transfer them over.
There you go.
So I think I got a major without him.
Well, it's been good.
Appreciate it, Todd.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Todd.
Catch you next one.
All right.